Today on Passion for Food, we do a food experiment. What happens if nachos and pizza have a baby? Well, the results were a super crunchy, cheesy, slightly spicy, delicious awesomeness that I just had to share with you guys. I'm calling it the Nachizza, and this nacho pizza is awesome for game day or any day. So let's go ahead and jump in here and get started. And the first thing we're going to need is some dough, though. So let's go ahead and dump in 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and about 1 tablespoon of instant yeast. We'll just give that a real quick mix with our fingers, and we want about 2/3 of a cup of water. Now we want this water nice and hot. It should be like, 110 degrees or so. I like to use about 90% of the water and reserve the rest to see if I need it later dough. So we'll just work that together with our hands until a dough ball forms. If it's too dry, add your remaining water. Now we do want to continue kneading this for around 5 minutes or so. We really need to develop that gluten to get the proper crust for our nachizza. Once our dough ball is nice and smooth like this and a little springy, we can just sit it back in the bowl, and I like covering it with just a little bit of spray oil before we sit this aside in a warm place to rise for about 30 minutes. And speaking of trying to get a rise out of somebody, have you heard about why the dough doesn't like to talk? Well, it's on a need-to-know basis. Now for this nacho pizza, we're doing something a little different cheese and sauce-wise, in that the cheese is the sauce. And all we need for this nacho cheese sauce is about 8 ounces of Velveeta-style melting cheese and about half a cup of milk. Now, could you make a bechamel sauce and add a bunch of cheese and use that? Yes, but I wouldn't. You just really don't get that nacho cheese flavor that is the cornerstone of the nachizza. Anyway, we just want to break that up and heat gently over medium heat until it's all nicely melted together. Now, yes, you could also use your microwave for this. If you have a big enough bowl, that would probably be easier. I actually wound up heating mine a little too aggressively, and because of all of those emulsifiers in the cheese, I got a bit of a stuck-on mess on the bottom of my pot. But hey, that's no big deal. Anyway, once that's beautifully melty and smooth, we just want to take it off the heat and set it aside for a minute while we prepare to press our dough into our pan. Now here's a slick tip. For the ultimate buttery crunch, I like coating this in just a thin layer of butter. You don't need much, just enough to cover it. That will also make our nacho pizza easier to remove later. I like to use just a little on my hands too, so nothing will stick to me as I get this dough pressed out. Now, because of the amount of dough and the size of the pan, we're going to wind up with a very thin crust here, but that's exactly what I want. I want that crunchiness associated with nachos. Okay, now that we have our dough pressed into service, let's go ahead and pour on our nacho cheese sauce. Get that all nicely spread out, and then I'm going to add about a pound of this Mexican restaurant-style ground beef. Check out the link in the top right for that recipe. Now, in terms of toppings, just think nachos. I'm going to go pretty simple here today and use a sliced onion. We could dice this up if we wanted, but I think the little rings look pretty cool on the final nachizza. Now, last but not least, I'm going to be adding sliced jalapeno peppers. Now, these are the pickled jarred variety, but fresh would also work fine here. I just like the little bit of extra tanginess you get from the pickled variety. Once we're happy with our toppings, we can go ahead and deliver this to a 450-degree oven where we're going to cook this for between 15 and 20 minutes or until golden brown. At which point I like pulling mine off onto a rack and letting it sit to cool just for about 5 minutes or so. And thanks to that properly developed gluten, super thin crust, and butter, this is going to be amazingly crunchy. Just listen to this. Oh yeah, now that's a crispy crust. This nacho pizza was just a little experiment I did, but I love the way these flavors came together so much, I just had to share it with you guys. And check out that perfect crust and listen to this crunch. Well, I guess that answers the age-old question, what happens if nachos and pizza have a baby? Nachizza! I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Passion for Food. If you have, give me a thumbs up below and don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you don't miss our future episodes. Drop me a comment below to let me know what kind of food experiments you would like to see. And check out one of our other great recipes playing on the screen now. This has been Graham with Passion for Food.